皆さん、こんにちは。我那覇真子です。今日は私はノースカロライナ州に来ております。今日はセックスチェンジリグレットという団体を運営されておりまして、LGBT 問題の正しい理解のためにということで当事者でもあられますが、啓蒙活動をされているウォルト・ハイヤーさんにインタビューをさせていただきたいと思います。Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate for giving me this opportunity. And I would like to ask you many questions.
Sure.
And I would love to share what you think and what you have experienced.
Yes.
And this channel, we do not do any censorship.
Okay.
So this video will be non-edited. So you would like to say whatever you would like to say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So I came to United States last year, and before going to United States, I did my research. And one of the reasons that I decided to research or do reports in United States are the things that you experience in United States is the same thing that we experience in Japan. And one of the huge issue in Japan is LGBT issue.
Right.
And because we have media that do not tell us what it is, but they broadcast with agenda.
Yeah.
But I was looking for somebody who would teach us without any agenda, but speak to us from the bottom of the heart and the fact.
Okay.
And I found your interview with Candace Owens, and so I decided to reach out to you. And you're very kind to offer this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So first of all, could you please explain what you have been doing? You have an organization called Sex Change Regret.
Yes. Well, my organization, which is my wife and I, we have a website, Sex Change Regret. So when people go through the surgical or social change of what they say is gender, and then they find out that it didn't really work for them, that they had regret or something happened to them because of the surgery, they contact me and then I help them what we call detransition or get their life back. And I've worked with thousands of individuals over the last dozen years. In fact, our website has attracted just people visiting the website. Over 2 million people have come to the website in 7 years, and I've got over 10,000 emails of people asking me questions. So we help people understand what this whole idea about the LGBT and the T in the LGBT. And what we have learned is that, number one, most important, is that when we're talking truthfully and factually, there is no such thing as a transgender. Okay?
Okay.
They don't exist. It's a made-up name because they use the name transgender to make people think that they have changed their gender. So when they use that word transgender, doesn't it sound like they've changed their gender? The word sort of evokes the idea that they have changed their gender. The fact of the matter is they haven't changed their gender. The other thing is they use the word transition. A person talks about transitioning. No one in the history of the world has actually changed or transitioned from one gender to the other. You see, it's not biologically possible to change somebody's gender. It's not medically possible to change somebody's gender. And just by announcing the fact that you say, oh, I feel like I'm born in the wrong body, does not change your gender. So what we really have is people expressing a feeling of wanting to be different than who they are. But the only thing they can actually change is their persona. And if you look up the word persona, what that means is your outward appearance. Inside, you're still the same. So the word transgender is not factually correct. Transitioning, people really don't do it. And in the people that I've worked with, you've heard the word gender dysphoria?
Yes.
I have not found the first person that has gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria, they say is a diagnosis. And when people say they have gender dysphoria, then the idea is then that you're supposed to have hormone therapy, and then that allows you to go through surgery. I haven't found one person that has gender dysphoria.
Wow.
Gender dysphoria, if we want to examine what it is, gender dysphoria is the opposite of euphoria. And that word euphoria means feeling happy. One is feeling happy, one is feeling disappointed. So dysphoria is more of a depression feeling, but it's not a diagnosis about your gender. So when we hear the word gender dysphoria, what they're really saying is that there's something deeper. There's a psychological, emotional, sexual, or social problem with who they are. So they either have something like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. There's one word that will probably confuse people when I say it, but it's very prominent, and it's called autogynephilia. And it's a sexual disorder. Many of the people who have express this desire to change from male to female are suffering from sexual fetish disorders. And it manifests itself in them putting on women's clothing, wearing women's makeup. So what we really have is people who are suffering from body dysmorphia, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and many other psychological disorders. And then many people also have social disorders. In other words, they have certain amount of fear about being socially out the way they are, and they feel like if they change the way they look, their persona, that they'll become more comfortable with who they are. But no one actually has biologically, no medical professional, no doctor, no surgeon has ever changed a man into a woman or a woman into a man. And so therein lies one of the biggest, I call it the biggest medical fraud, lie in history.
Wow. I would like to repeat. You said biggest medical fraud.
Yes.
Wow.
and it's a medical fraud in history because they have made this whole statement about people transitioning, which doesn't happen. They say they're transgender and they're not. They say they have gender dysphoria and they don't. And the fact of the matter is that you can still test these people, their DNA. After they go through the test, their DNA doesn't change. Their DNA stays identically the same. So there is no change in who they are. That's why it's a fraud. Mm-hmm. If you cannot change who they are, then you're not telling the truth. And that's why it's fraud. Mm-hmm. And they're making people believe that they're going through something that they can't go through. And I know this because I lived identifying as a female for 8 years myself. So I know that it's a fraud. And in my own life, I challenged the surgeon to come to court with me in our California court and say, please prove to me and the court that the procedure that you use in surgery and the hormones and so forth actually change me from a male to a female. Prove that in court. Mm-hmm. He couldn't do it.
Oh, you actually went to the court.
I went to court.
Wow.
And then I have a document signed by saying they cannot change anybody's gender with hormones, surgery, or any other procedures. The fact that the surgery they perform is cosmetic surgery. It gives the appearance that something has changed. But it's not medically sufficient in changing someone's gender. So the key word for us to learn from this today is that yes, people can change their persona, that is changing the way they look, but they can't change who they are. Because when in life, when the sperm hits the egg, that's called conception. Mm-hmm. And when conception occurs, you can't change that biological structure. That's where gender sex is made. At conception, it's unchangeable. And the other big lie that they use is, you've heard this, what birth were you assigned, what gender were you assigned at birth? You've probably heard people say that.
Assignment.
They say, were you assigned at birth being a male, or were you assigned at birth being a female? The fact of the matter is, no one, again, in history has ever been assigned their gender at birth because it was fixed and immutable, the egg. You cannot change, you can't unravel what happens when the sperm hits the egg over that period of time that begins to develop into a person. You cannot change it. So another lie. So this again is why this is the greatest medical fraud in our lifetime.
Wow, it's what you're explaining is very clear, and I really understand. And like I felt like I watched your video interview, and it opened my eyes. But now you opened my eyes again. And when we talk about LGBT issue or transgender, we need to. So you're saying that the words itself begins the lie.
Yes.
So we need to be careful about when we talk about this, we need to use correct words.
Yes, I'm trying to get people to understand to not use the word transgender. Don't use the word transition. And understand that when you say gender dysphoria, that what you're talking about is a word called a symptom. That means they have a symptom of something else, what we call comorbidity. In other words, they have some other issue going on. And so when I help people and they contact me and they say they have gender dysphoria, I say, no, you don't have gender dysphoria. Let's find out. Here's a key word that I use with everybody that I work with, and it really helps them. I always ask them, why do you not like who you are?
Oh, I see. It's not about women, men. Why you do not like yourself?
That's exactly. It's not about women and men. Ask these individuals, why do you not like who you are? And then that's the first question. And the second one is the most important one of all. And that is, keep in mind when you go through these procedures of hormones and surgery and all that, what's really happening to you? You're destroying who you are. So the idea of changing who you are is what I believe and what I instruct people to understand is that is self-destructive behavior. So what you're really doing is destroying who you are.
So it's like when people have mental issues, sometimes people cut themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Something like, I see.
Yes, so if we can begin to frame this in a different way and begin to understand that these people aren't becoming someone else. We've already explained that you can't become this other person. Then what's really happening? What they're doing is destroying who they are, the very person they are. They're destructing them. So what they want to do, because of whatever's going on that they're troubled with, is they want to erase who they are. And then they try to become someone who they can never become.
It's something like I feel like we are talking about something like ideology too, because some people come up with this utopia that could not happen in reality, but they go to this, they do not like whatever happens in the world, so we come up with idea and we just go forward and destroy everything what we have, traditions. That's kind of the same.
Yes,
same
exactly.
thing.
And what they're really trying to do is escape. They're trying to escape feeling some pain or some hurt or something that happened in their life. 100% of the time when I work with someone and spend time with them, we have the opportunity to find out actually what happened to them. And so many of these individuals who are trying to identify as someone else were sexually abused. They were emotionally abused. Maybe they were physically abused. They were abandoned by their family. Maybe a neighbor harmed them and no one knew about it. And so if you begin to look into their life, you will find out and spend time with them. When you ask them that question, why don't you like who you are? I've had girls sit and tell me, well, because I was sexually abused. And so there's always something that's causing them to not like who they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to change who they are, right?
If they're happy, yeah, no.
If you're happy, you're not
we
going
want to keep going.
That's right. I mean, so the people who are psychologically, emotionally, and sexually happy don't try to change who they are. And so when we talk about this population, and they have a very high rate of attempted suicides, and what we know from people who have high rates of suicide, we know that 90% of everyone who attempts to commit suicide is struggling with an untreated mental disorder. Suicide is a sign there's something deeply wrong in your psyche. Again, it tells us the story that there's something that's causing them to not like who they are, so they're trying to get rid of themselves. And so transgender identities are sort of what I refer to as the suicide you live through. It's so they're just committing suicide to who they are by giving themselves a new identity. They're putting hormones in themselves. They do surgical things. But the fact of the matter is that they're still alive, but they tried to kill off who they were, erase that person.
I see. It's a way to say goodbye to their life without ending a life. But they do it in this way.
Yes, that's why I call it the suicide you live through.
Suicide you live through.
This is the one thing you can live through this by identifying. You committed suicide over here to who this person is by identifying as someone you can never become, but you're still alive. You're still in pain. And so the people who contact me, I recognize the fact that they're in pain and they need help. So I immediately try to find out what caused them to not like who they are. And one of the things that most people don't realize is that young boys, if they're sexually abused at a young age by another adult, they want to rid themselves of their genitalia, not because they want to become a female, but because they want to protect themselves against being touched and sexually abused again. So in other words, to better understand that, if the boy says, I'll take off my genitalia, then no one will touch me again.
So to prevent being touched physically.
Yes. So, and then with the female who was sexually abused, she will identify as a man as a way to be repugnant or repel someone who might otherwise want to sexually abuse her again. So in both cases, many of these conditions are a way to protect themselves from being harmed or sexually abused again. And so in all these cases that we're talking about, no one is becoming anybody else. No one is, it's not about female and male. It's about protecting ourselves from sexual abuse, from emotional abuse, from psychological abuse, an alcoholic father that beat them. I just worked with a young man, he's 25 years old. His older brother sexually abused him, and his dad physically abused him, his alcoholic dad. And just recently he decided to, go through the procedure. He contacted me 8 months after having all the surgery, and he said, I need help. And then we were able to identify the fact that the individual is suffering from schizophrenia, bipolar 1 disorder, and PTSD, but they went ahead and cut his body parts off unnecessarily. And so if we can meet these people who are struggling and who think that they're a transgender or they want to change who they are, erase who they are, if we can meet them before they get to that point, then what we do is spend time with them and begin to ask these serious questions. What happened that caused you to not like who you are? Tell me what happened. Give me the story, because every last one of them has a story.
Wow, and you've been reached out by over 10,000 people, and you reach out to 180 countries.
180. Out of the 10,000 emails, I don't know how many thousand of those were actually direct people struggling, because some of them came from psychologists and doctors and surgeons and others, but many of them, thousands of them were. Wow. And so when I get the opportunity to sit with them, then I have the opportunity to ask them these really important questions because what we know is that nobody changes their gender. What we know is they're destroying who they are. And what we know we need to find out is, why do you want to destroy who you are? What happened that was so horrible that you don't like yourself? Very critical question.
Yes, and this is my first time hearing this way of seeing this. What should I say? What should I say? So you said we should not use the term transgender, but instead.
Yeah, I think it's people who are struggling with their social persona.
Social persona.
Persona, what they look like, you know, how they, and it's the way they feel, you know. I mean, I could sit here and put on a cowboy hat and a cowboy shirt and cowboy boots, and I could look like I'm a cowboy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But that doesn't make me a cowboy. Because a cowboy goes out on the range and rides horses and, you know, does all that stuff, right?
You need to go Texas.
So, I mean, and I could put on a surgeon's hat and a surgeon's uniform and put all the stuff around me and put my name on there, but I wouldn't be a doctor. So what we have is men putting on a dress, saying they're a female, and they're no more a female than I am a doctor if I put on a doctor's uniform. That I would be telling a lie if I put on a doctor's uniform and said, I identify as a doctor. Right? So,
yes.
I mean, if we want to be really provocative about this, what if I said, oh, I identify as Masako? Right? See what, and we can laugh, right? But that's exactly what people are saying.
So you
right?
wear this
yes,
scarf.
Right. I mean, I could say, well, I'm Masako from Japan, female. We know that's a lie.
Yes, but you're saying that it's the same as saying like you're Masako.
Yeah. And so people can identify, a man can identify as a woman. The problem is he can never, ever become a woman.
Yes, because we have this brain, we can imagine anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I can be anything in my dream.
But intellectually and scientifically speaking, you can't become a woman.
No.
You can only do it as a fantasy. You can change your persona. You can make people think that you're different. But in reality, you're not different at all.
That's why you're saying that people who go through those procedures, they regret afterwards because the problem is not solved by doing those.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And they think that by identifying as a different person, that it's going to solve all of their problems. The real problem is it makes all of their problems worse.
Worse. Oh,
it doesn't get better. And that's why they're 19 times more likely to commit suicide.
Wow.
If they go through this procedure, but if they don't do the surgery, they will reduce their chances by 19 times.
Wow.
So you're better off dealing with what's causing you to not like who you are. And identify what that is. Is it schizophrenia? Then get treatment for schizophrenia. If it's bipolar disorder, get treatment for bipolar disorder or dissociative disorder or obsessive compulsive disorder. Get treatment for those things. Or if you have social anxiety or depression, then go get treatment just for that.
I see. This is how like media or people who want to be nice to everybody, they tend to encourage people to, like, you can do whatever you want, and if you want to become men, go ahead, take surgery or hormone. They're actually encouraging, and this movement is getting bigger and bigger in Japan too. But if we would like to really be help of them, then we need to actually do not change the subject, but to really focus on their issues.
So this is why it's so critically important. What you're saying is that by encouraging them, we're actually pushing them to be 19 times more likely to commit suicide. Well, if we were to tell them, and don't confront them directly and say, no, you're not a female or whatever. You don't have to do that. But what you want to do is ask those questions. Why don't you like who you are? What happened that caused you to not like who you are? And why do you want to destroy who you are? Those are three really important questions. And force them to answer those questions, because those are so revealing that they have to get in and self-reflect on their life and begin to understand. And I've had people open up and say, well, this happened or that happened. I was passed around to 7 foster homes. I never had a parent. My dad abused me physically, or my mom was an alcoholic, or somebody was, they have all these things that happened. And it destroys who they are. One of the other things that we need to understand too is that pornography is one of the most psychologically destructive things that people can view. So we have now many games on the internet that are pornography games. And what we know is that actually pornography actually destroys the brain.
Wow.
It actually changes the structure of the brain. It changes the way you see yourself. And many of the people that I work with are addicted to pornography. They got addicted. So if we know these issues, when we ask them what happened, what did you do, and they start talking about pornography, then we know that the pornography was a powerful influence on them wanting to not be who they are because of things that they see. Pornography is absolutely destructive, very destructive.
Wow. So, so you're talking about pornography, and so nowadays in schools, people are liberal people or leftist people are trying to encourage to introduce this education, and they can choose the gender, or so they started to talk about this. What should I say? This private things.
Yes, yeah.
When they were little, so they're exposed to those genres.
Well, there's something, there's a word that's going to be becoming more and more popular about this. But what we have, this is a way to indoctrinate kids. There's an indoctrination process. And this indoctrination changes the way children think about themselves, the way they think about their parents, the way they think about life, the way they think about sexuality. It's very destructive. But what we're beginning to learn, and I've written a couple of articles about this, and I'll just introduce a little bit of it here. But what we realize today is that there's a term called cultural Marxism.
Yes.
Cultural Marxism is what's introducing these things to children, because they realize if they introduce this to children, that they can destroy what a man is, they can destroy what a woman is, and if they can destroy those two things, they can destroy what the family is. The very foundation of our life, our structure is family, is it not? Mom, dad, and the kids. Marxists want to destroy that whole process that we have in the United States. Then what you have in many countries, and in the United States as well, is the church.
Yes, church.
So Marxists hates God, church, and family more than anything. And so if they can destroy the child early on, they can begin to destroy the entire next generation. We should be fighting cultural Marxism with everything we have. No school anywhere in the world should have pornography and transgenderism, LGBT things in the school system at all. It is destroying our children, and it will destroy the entire next generation.
This is a very scary thing, and I hear that nowadays when little kids who are brainwashed, those education.
Yes.
I should not call this education, but brainwashed by those evils. Those little kids, if they say they wanted to change their, they wanted to become, for example, if they were a girl, if they wanted to be men, parents cannot say no to them, right?
Right.
So it's getting scary, and so I would like to. If I may,
yes.
I would like to ask you about what you've been through, and So you've been through this. You did surgery
Yes.
to become women, and then you decided to reassign. That's why you know so much knowledge based on your experiences.
Yeah.
And could you please go through what happened to you?
Yeah. Well, see, when I was very young, 4 years, my grandmother dressed me up in a dress because she was a seamstress. She made dresses. And I think she just thought it was cute.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't think she was being malicious or trying to harm me. I think she just thought it was cute because she made me a dress. The problem comes when she started telling me how cute I was and how wonderful I was as a girl. What happens when you start telling a young boy who's wearing a dress how cute he is, you begin to destroy his inner core about who he is. That's very destructive. What you're really saying to that boy, what my grandmother was saying to me was, there's something wrong with you as a boy.
Oh, that's what she said?
No, but I mean, the message.
I see.
The message when we start affirming boys in dresses is we're, without using the words, we're saying there's something wrong with you, you're a boy, and you're better off as a girl.
I see.
So then you begin to destroy who they are. And that's why it's so hideous in schools to do this. Well, then when my father found out about what Grandma was doing, he started disciplining me with a hardwood floor plank, you know, hitting me very hard.
Oh.
And he was scared because this was in the 1940s and he didn't know what to do. So he thought he was going to use a hardwood floor plank to shape me into a strong man.
I see.
But what his hardwood floor plank did was so abusive and so hurtful, it was actually destroying me. You know, anytime you physically abuse somebody, you're not helping them. And so then my dad's brother, Uncle Fred, began to sexually molest me. And so when you have those three events before you're 10 years old, you're not getting life off to a proper start to have good, healthy, psychological and emotional understanding of who you are. And that's why children who are sexually abused, like myself, will come out later on in life and be confused about who they are and want to identify as somebody else, not because you really want to become someone else, but because you don't like yourself. You don't like being the one who is abused. Who wants to be hit with a hardwood floor plank? Who wants to be sexually abused? Nobody. And so we use these things, these tools of transgenderism and so forth, to escape this emotional pain. And we've learned this from actually prisoners who've been locked in and beaten in prisons. And they develop PTSD. They have all these things that happen to them. Psychologically, it begins to destroy people. The same thing is happening when you do this to some young kid. It's just not done in a prison, and it's not quite as out there in the open in terms of the harm done, but the harm comes later. I mean, I've had people contact me as far as 40 years after they supposedly changed who they were.
40.
40.
Oh.
And say, I know it was a mistake and it's something that happened to me early in life. And so wouldn't it be wonderful if we stopped affirming people and began to start having this conversation with them before they get to the hormones, before they get to the surgery, and before they destroy their life and engage in this self-destructive behavior like I did. So when I went through this and I got married, but I was drinking heavily because alcohol is another very destructive component. I mean,
before getting surgery, so you were married as a man?
Yeah,
okay.
I was married. Most of the people that I work with, probably 90% of the men who identify as women are not homosexual. This is not an issue of homosexuality.
I see.
This is an issue of individuals who've been harmed. And they're mostly heterosexual men. A very small portion of men who identify as women and call themselves transgender are homosexual. The homosexual component of cross-dressing people are drag queens. They are all homosexual.
Okay.
That's the homosexual component.
So they like men.
Yes.
Okay.
And so many of the men that I work with were married, had children like myself. They're heterosexual, but many of them suffer from many different disorders. I had a dissociative disorder. Some people had autogynephilia. And what that is that they will put on a dress and put on makeup, a man, and look in the mirror. And what they see in the mirror becomes the object of their sexual affection. They fall in love with themselves.
Wow.
That's how serious this is. That's not transgenderism. That's a sexual fetish mental disorder.
Oh, that's different issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are no transgenders, so we have to look at who they are. We have people who claim to be transgender who aren't not transgender. They're actually suffering from autogynephilia or a transvestic fetish disorder, or they have a mental disorder, or they have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So we have, our job to help people is to sit with them and identify what we call the comorbidity, the underlying issues that cause them to want to harm themselves and not like who they are. This is really where we are. That's why there are no transgenders, no one transitions, and gender dysphoria is only a symptom of something much greater than what they're talking about.
I see. Oh, it's very interesting. And when did you came up with this kind of like conclusion or self-awareness? Because you decided to change your gender at that time.
Yeah.
And then you went through surgery. What was your thought at that time, and what happened and made you decided to do it again?
I was at the University of California in Santa Cruz studying psychology.
Okay.
And I started looking at psychology in the books, and I realized that people who identify this way suffer from many mental disorders. And as I began to study this, I said, well, we're not helping them by giving them hormones, by cutting off body parts. We're only harming them. What we need to do is identify the underlying comorbid disorders. So that was when I began to realize that we're going in the wrong direction, and that we need to begin to stop talking about becoming transgender, and we need to start talking about helping them get their life back and helping them understand what a healthy psychology, what healthy psyche is, and to be emotionally sound and fit as a man or woman. But cutting off body parts and taking hormones is not a healthy thing to do. So I was at UC Santa Cruz studying psychology that made all the difference in the world in my life.
Oh, in your life. And you went through reassignment surgery, and you said in one of the video I recall, it was more even harder procedure to go
to come back.
To come back.
Yeah, I think what's more difficult is that everybody's so pushing everybody to change.
Yes.
When you try to come back, there's this resistance. And so the resistance is, you start to wonder, am I going to fall back? Am I going to have trouble? Am I gonna go back to being Laura again? And so the difficulty is kind of within you. What's going to happen? How do I overcome this? But the fact of the matter is, once you begin to deal with the causes, the underlying issues of being physically hit with a hardwood floor plank and being sexually abused, and you begin to deal with those issues, we know that people who are sexually harmed are hurt deeply. We need to heal those hurts. And so once I learned that, and I began this journey back to a healthy psyche, then I knew that I was on the right track. And then I would be able to help people because I had this information that no one was talking about.
I see. Is there any other organization or any group of people who give help like you do to others in this world.
There probably is, but I don't know who they are. I've been doing this longer than most anyone, and so I don't. I'm sure there are, but I don't really know who they are. I know there's people who have gone through this and come out the other side, but not all of them are helping people. I think there's a gal named Kathy Grace Duncan who works primarily with women.
Okay.
And I think she's in Seattle. She may be one of the ones who's doing this. And I know when I talked to her, she said that all of the girls that she works with were sexually abused.
Oh, wow.
100% of them. So if we can stop the sexual abuse, we can eliminate people wanting to change who they are.
Or even more hurt themselves more.
Yes, yeah, because that's all you're doing. You're just carrying on self-destructive process.
Oh, the reason why I asked you is because in Japan, we don't have any chance to learn what you have taught me now. And you said you reach out to 180 countries. And it seems like when we see only the mainstream media, what we need to do is to understand what they're saying and encourage them to get heard.
Yeah.
I wonder why we don't hear this kind of story more, or if there is any movement trying to prevent actually people getting recovery rather than hurt themselves.
Right. Well, they try to crush me. They don't want you to know that I'm out here.
Are you?
Yeah, I mean they don't want me doing what I'm doing.
Okay.
They don't like, the LGBT does not like me.
So you get actually attack?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, what kind of attack did you
get?
Well,
there's a lot of things they do. We have to hide our address.
Really?
Yeah, we can't publish anything about who we are because they will be out here. But what's interesting is that many countries now have asked me to speak on these issues. I spoke Tuesday on a television show in Russia. Talking about the very same thing. I've been on television in the Czech Republic speaking on this very subject. In fact, in the Czech Republic, as being on television and working with them, they have stopped all of this teaching about transgenderism in schools to kids.
Wow, that's great.
And so I've been in the Czech Republic, I've been in Spain, Santiago, Chile, New Zealand, Australia, many places, Canada. I'm much less popular in the United States.
Oh, rather than outside.
Outside the United States, very much. I've been on Russian television teaching about this many, many times because in Russia, they recognize in Russia that it's destroying, transgenderism is destroying Russian families. And they want this information to help keep the family together. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, and I really hope you could come to Japan and give us the direction, or our government, because our government is kind of weak, so they are pressed. And at the same time, people, in general, people want to help people, but we get this false narrative, or what you said, medical fraud.
Yes.
So we are kind of being weaponized.
Yes.
To attack own family, but we are thinking that we are helping them, but we are actually harming them and harming us.
Yes.
And society.
You're actually destroying the culture of the family by telling boys they can be girls, by telling girls they can be boys. You're destroying the very foundation of not only the family in Japan, but every family around the world. So we value our parents. We value our children. We value our grandparents. We value this. To tell these individuals, these young individuals, that you aren't who you are is just false. And it's destroying many, many countries. Thankfully, there's Sweden has stopped doing this practice of changing children.
Sweden.
And we've got that going on in the Czech Republic. Many other countries now are really taking a serious look at taking this out of the schools because they're recognizing the long-term harm caused to children is not best for their society.
Oh, wow. Oh, really? Maybe I should try to have you in Japan, and
yes.
you could save
I'd be happy to come to Japan.
Oh, yes. Wow. And I think we are kind of running out of time, but I would love to ask you more questions. But if I could have another opportunity, maybe do online, or if you could come to Japan after the COVID restriction ends.
Yes.
Yeah, I really hope you could come, because recently we get news in Japan. Men who identify himself as women go to public bath. In Japan, we have this culture. We love to go to public bath. Of course, there is a women's section and men's section, but those people try to go to women's section, and they say that we have right to be whatever we want. So it's happening.
Yeah. Well, when a man puts on a dress, he's not a woman. He's still a man in a dress. And he can say he's a woman, but he's not a woman. He can take hormones, he's not a woman. He can have surgery, he's not a woman. The fact of the matter is there's nothing a man can do to become a woman. He can't do it. That's the medical fraud of transgenderism.
Oh, thank you very much. I learned a lot, and those many issues like LGBT issue. Is it correct that I say LGBT issue, or is there any other correct?
No, that's fine. They have many different ways.
Okay.
So don't worry about that.
Oh, okay. So LGBT issue or some abortion issue too. We cannot go much deeper. We don't have time, but I learned there are pro-choice and pro-life, and
right.
I'm absolutely pro-life because I'm here because my parents gave me this opportunity that they didn't have. They were not fooled by those ideologies.
Right.
So it's like thinking we are realizing what we are. We are human, and there are certain limitations that we can do. We should not exceed what we are.
That's right.
So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, and everything is, like you said, is aiming to destroy family.
Yes.
So we need to realize the real issue and then protect ourselves, our family, our country.
Yes.
And lastly, this is your main camera. Could you please give Japanese people message, particularly those who may thinking to get surgery?
Yes.
Your advice to them.
Yes. If you're confused about who you are and you're struggling with your identity, the only thing I ask you to do is try to look and self-reflect on what happened that has caused you to not like who you are. What happened? Because I'm sure you're a perfectly good, healthy, wonderful person deep down inside. But we need to know what happened that caused you to not like who you are. When we find out what happened to you, we can work with that, and we can make it so you won't want to be somebody else, that you want to be that perfect person that you really are deep down inside. You don't need hormones, you don't need surgery, and you don't need to change who you are. You're perfect just the way you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love this word. You're perfect the way you are. Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.